Hey, what's up? I'm Zella Day, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
Zella, good morning, and it's so good to get to talk to you about this upcoming record. I'm super excited for this record simply because it's you can hear an evolution in your songwriting, you can hear an evolution in your vocals and your artistry. I'm curious, like stepping into the initial writing process for Sunday in Heaven, like how did you know that you were in the process of a new record?
Because I was out of the old record cycle. I mean, I knew that I was writing the next record probably in the middle of Kicker when I was on the road and touring and starting to write. It really is helpful if you can get started on the next thing while you're in, you know, record that you're promoting, so that there's no really dead space in between. You know, it doesn't feel like you go on this rise and it's kind of this like intense incline and then you're just dropped off at the top. Like, what's next? I was given really good advice by a friend of mine years ago who is in the record business, and um, said, the best thing that you can do is plant the seed while your other plants have sprouted. Um, so yeah, that answers your question.
As I mentioned, like it sounds like an evolution for you. Um, for some reason, maybe I just didn't catch it on the first record on Kicker, but on this record, I am hearing this like new kind of vibrato in your voice that I've like quickly fallen in love with. Is this something that just naturally happened for you? Did you just learn a new way of singing? Like, have you noticed that there's this vibrato going on this record?
Yeah, I mean, the style of my voice has has always kind of been there. I started singing when I was really young, so I had this natural inclination for vibrato. The first record, though, Kicker, is more straightforward pop, and so I kind of worked to sing a little straighter for Kicker. And Sunday in Heaven, I just am giving myself kind of the creative liberties and also just more of the natural sort of instinctual liberties to do and sound the way I would, if you're just kind of sitting in the room listening to me sing. It's kind of like, I feel like some artists are better, like you have strengths and weaknesses in both spaces of recorded music and also, the performance aspect of what we do. Some people just really thrive in the studio and the best sound from them comes in that space. Um, and sometimes it's the live space. For me, it's always been more the live space. I feel like I'm trying to connect the dots of making my records sound as potent as my live performances do. So Sunday in Heaven is a step in that direction to give the listener more of a feel of my live voice.
You also got to work with a new producer for this album. What was
Mhm.
that experience like between you and Jay Joyce, and how do you feel that this producer helped you step out of your comfort zone more than you were already doing with your lyrics?
hmm Um, it's kind of a step outside of my world and a step into his, which was really refreshing. I had spent, 2 years prior to making the record in 2020 writing the music. So when I got to the Neon Church is what the studio is called in Nashville. Um, I had already had the majority of the songs written, and small things came together. Like certain arrangements and chord changes and intros and outros and those kinds of things that really just polish a grouping of songs. But he was just really supportive, and Jay Joyce is really eccentric in a way that's kind of like it's contagious. His sort of being and his unapologetic nature and being himself and his vision um, makes, I don't know, made me feel like unapologetic in being myself and the creative vision and how far we were going to take it. You know, it was just so nice to be in that studio for 2 weeks straight, just going to work every day, you know, and creating this kind of new world.
Did you do any songwriting with him at all?
Yeah, little bits of songwriting. I mean, we had pre-production, like a week of pre-production before getting into the meat of recording. You know, and he has a great ear. And so it was really kind of just like going back and forth and showing him the songs and him being like, yeah, that could be better. You know, and being like, yeah, you're probably right. It's not the easiest thing to hear, but you're probably right, you know, and then sort of being, just having like just the pressure of like, okay, I came to Nashville. Now's the time to finish these lyrics and finish these songs. And he really helped put everything past the line. So
I feel like you're more vulnerable on this album. You tell us more about your story. You take us more into your world. What was that writing process like for you? Like, was this something that just naturally just these lyrics and ideas and thoughts just poured out of you? Or is this something that you had in mind to do, but it took you some time to be comfortable doing, like writing them down and also recording them?
I've never really had any fear storytelling within music. I think there's something actually like more secure and safe about it. Like, you know, different. It's different having a conversation in a song than it is sitting down, even with you, having a conversation about the record and what it is and what it means. I've always seen songs as a more free and safe space. So, if anything, just as I've grown as a songwriter over the last 10 or so years, just tried to really refine that skill of really kind of erasing, you know, or trying to get rid of like the veil between me and the listener. You know, some of my favorite songwriters, also just like contemporary songwriters, like a Sharon Van Etten, for example. She's so good at taking your hand and putting you in the room with her. You know, this experience that she's describing is so visceral and palpable. And my favorite songs that I've written are the ones that I feel like I'm most close to sort of being inside whatever emotion or concrete experience, you know.
How would you say you learned to write that way? Because it's one thing being a songwriter, but it's another thing being able to like take the listener into your world and feel like you're sitting right next to them. So how do you feel that you were able to accomplish that?
Probably writing a bunch of shit I don't like, you know. Seriously, trial and error, writing songs that are like, I cannot believe I wrote that, how embarrassing. But like having to write those in order to get to the ones that feel the most honest and authentic. So it really is just like being on the road to yourself, you know.
Was there one song in particular, or maybe a couple songs in particular on this album that you felt were challenging you to either finalize or even like just record the vocals because it was so personal and honest?
I mean, yeah, like Radio Silence was kind of an uncomfortable performance. That really kind of took setting up the environment in a way that made me feel like the people that were in the room listening were free of judgment, you know. I actually didn't record that vocal in Nashville. So I recorded that song, Radio Silence, and the vocal and all the overdubs and everything in Los Angeles with my friend Alex Kasnoff, who also co-wrote the song with me. But yeah, that song Out of the Group definitely rears its head at being the most uncomfortable with the songs.
Did you choose to record that in LA because it was so uncomfortable and you felt more comfortable doing it with Alex, or just the way
No,
things worked out?
The way things worked out. And Radio Silence was actually written after Sunday in Heaven was mixed and mastered. And I wrote that song after that was all, wrapped up. And it was really important, and I felt imperative to the record and its story to add that one. And so luckily everybody was agreeable to do that for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main ones that really takes me in and makes me feel like I'm literally sitting next to you the entire time when I'm listening to it. And it gives me chills listening to it. But
Thanks,
as far as like that writing process, because it's such a real experience, and especially the climate of things when that was going on, like what were some of the challenges that you faced during that writing process?
Probably my mom. My mom being like, "Are you sure? My baby, I don't know if I want that out there with my baby talking about that. It's like kind of vulnerable, don't you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, but vulnerability is power." And especially, I don't know, I feel like the collective mindset, at least for women, especially for women in music, I feel is more supportive than it's ever been. So I'm really proud, and that song, even in its own small way, to be like a contribution to that voice, that feminine voice and strength that I feel like is really a big guide right now in the music industry and in our world. Always has been, but right now it feels like the truest force. Felt really good. So yeah, difficult like along the way for my own personal reasons that like I don't really need to get into, but ultimately like it was more rewarding than anything.
Another thing that I loved about the song is like during the chorus part of it, your voice just kind of reminded me of Dolores from Cranberries.
She
And
was a major influence. Dolores
that's
was a major influence.
like I don't know, it's weird to say, but like I felt her presence like in this record. And it was that, I mean, now that you say she's an influence, like was she like an influence for the song in particular, or just an influence for like your music in general?
I mean, for that song, for Radio Silence, and I can kind of tend to do this, and sometimes I feel like it's good, and other times I feel like it kind of works against me. But I feel like there's, especially on this record, listening top to bottom, there's a lot of different songs on this record. Like it's dynamic, and there's a range of things going on. It's like you have a Dance for Love that is really heavily influenced by Minnie Riperton, and then you have a Radio Silence where it's like I'm really into the Cranberries too. Sometimes it's hard for me to like pick and choose and like pick a lane. And so I just decide all of it's good and let's just put it all on there and then just see what happens. But she was a major influence for that song. Major influence. Yeah. Yeah. Also Adrienne Lenker too was an influence. Just like I really wanted to kind of achieve that really intimate those verses are like really intimate, right? And then you have like that strong kind of anthemic yodel in the chorus that is this like really beautiful juxtaposition. Like in my mind, it kind of is similar to like a cry. It's like a plead, a cry, a war cry. It's painful. It's somehow what would be the word? Euphoric, Sometimes it can be like really euphoric to just like really let go and let something like pass through you and like truly just move past in this sort of like physical because singing is so physical, and to get to do that on stage, like I knew in writing that kind of chorus that was going to be such a like dramatic and also like emotional and cathartic part of the set, and it is. played it a few times live, and it just is like a really interesting thing to kind of do the storytelling that's like really pared down and pared back in the verses, and then kind of, you know, explode into that moment. So yeah, Dolores, definitely her guardian angel, was watching over that song, I think, a little bit. I'd like to think.
It's crazy that you wrote this after the album was mixed and mastered. Coming back in to add it to this record, did you had to remove a song, or you just added another track to this album?
I just added another track. Yeah.
And
it's been a long
ahead,
time, you know. It's just been like a few years of like the music. I mean, I recorded the record in 2020 and we're in 2022. I've continued to write music. You know, Holocene was another song that was written after the record was made. That was just a standalone single. I really love that song as well. And Radio Silence was just one of those that, especially just with the climate, the political climate, and how I just really feel like I really want that song and really wanted that song on the record as a part of its legacy. And sometimes it works that way, you know, just like depending on what your agreement is with whatever producer you're working with. You can add things later sometimes. Definitely was a conversation, you know, Sunday in Heaven and the way that it was made, and the time period. And it's really hard to like, it's almost impossible to capture the same tone, you know, and sounds in a new space. And so Radio Silence was kind of this exception to the rule. Sunday in Heaven too, actually. Sunday in Heaven, the song, wasn't recorded in Nashville at the Neon Church. It was recorded at my friend's studio in LA. So there were some like late additions and some Frankensteining, but I like to think of it as kind of like perfect in its imperfections, you know. But it was just important to me to add everything that I possibly could, that I felt like my audience like really deserves to have, you know, just like this time caught up to itself, because a lot of the music, like I was saying, was written prior to 2020, and is Radio Silence and Sunday in Heaven, those are just really current songs. So
which track would you say you had the most excitement during the recording process, and why?
I'm such a ball of excitement, and like I'm always like losing my mind over all the tracks. Probably Girls. Carla Azar, the drummer, who played on Sunday in Heaven, plays this amazing solo in Girls that's just like one of my favorite things on the record. And I remember her playing that. We were all sitting in the studio, and she was in her room, and we were just trying to get the perfect take. And she just is such a tasteful drummer, and just has such like, yes, like an incredible feel, but also just like unexpected touches. And there's so much personality in her part in that song that it just kind of solidified just like the vision of having also just artists involved with Sunday in Heaven. It was important to me to have people who were bringing themselves into the process, instead of just, you know, having hired guns that play everything perfectly and robotically, and sometimes without human emotion. And during that song and the recording of that song, Carla really just kind of exceeded like any and all expectations, and also just made me feel really like validated that I had made the right decision to make the record there, and with Jay and with her, and, you know, my friend John and Ellie and all those people that were in the room with me. So
I'm excited for everyone to listen to this album. It's incredible. And I'm super happy that I got to sit down and talk to you about it. Lastly, to close us off, like during this entire process, what would you say was your, or better yet, how do you feel that Jay allowed you to try something new on this album?
I wouldn't say like allowed, I would say more challenged. He like set the standard really high. And I love working under pressure, and I love working with people um, who are like, I mean, obviously he's been a part of some incredible records and made some incredible records and has a lifetime, you know, worth of achievements and under his belt. And so I just love being in the room with people that I respect just because, you know, their taste level and what they've been a part of and kind of just who they are as a person. It's like being in the room with people who are better than me, you know? Like I'm not a producer, but like Jay, just like I don't know, his presence, because he is such a force of nature musically, really pushed me to kind of just like elevate and kind of just meet him in that space as best I could, you know. And it's good, it's healthy. It kind of is like this out of body experience, you know, where you're not really thinking as much as you're just kind of making and going off the cuff. So there are a lot of choices that were made that were like the first choices, which is really good. And I always find that if you're really like in sync with either the songs or the recordings, the less you have to think, the better. And if you can be around people who are like helping kind of guide this process and we're all like headed towards the same thing, that same peak, then you're onto something really good, you know. It's like it's a language without speaking. And so if anything, I'm grateful that Jay was able to speak that language with me, the one that we don't speak, you know. Yeah.
Well, congratulations with this album. Again, Sunday
Thank
in
you.
Heaven drops October 14th. And Zella, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much.